Hey folks, Shane DeApril here, co-owner and co-publisher at Campaigns and Elections. Thanks to today's video sponsor, McShane LLC. I'm glad to be joined by Ed Williams. He is the digital director at McShane LLC. Ed, thanks for chatting with us today.
Hey Shane, good to see you.
So tell me about what you're seeing on the digital front. So many impacts from COVID as campaigns have had to switch everything that they're doing. Give me the top lines here from campaigns and causes that you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been pretty crazy since nobody can really be in the field the last couple of months. Digital has just gone through the roof. So both the standard digital outreach as well as digital voter contact has been pretty epic lately. Everybody's pulled everybody off the streets, all their volunteers off the streets, put them on the phones. Your digital efforts, advertising and otherwise, and voter contact have become incredibly important. And it varies a little state by state as well. We're also seeing a lot of impact from mail-in voting. There are some states that have never done mail-in voting before or have never done it at this scale, which has taken them from election day to a month-long get-out-the-vote process. So a lot of impacts and a lot of things that are showing up in digital.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about vote by mail, and the impacts there, Ed. How are campaigns having to change? You alluded a bit to the timeline in terms of voter education. That's going to be so important. And really going state by state with sort of the varying rules that we have with vote by mail and question over how those windows will expand, if those universes and windows will expand in enough time for voters to take advantage of them. How are you communicating with voters? How should campaigns be thinking about doing that communication? How are you doing it in digital and reinforcing it in other areas? Give me a rundown on how we deal with the voter education component of the vote by mail piece.
Sure. Well, I'm based here in Las Vegas, Nevada, so this is a good example state. Our election is normally June 9th. We have a little bit of in advance early voting, but for the first time ever, we've done 100% all mail-in ballots, and those ballots dropped on May 1st throughout the state. So, more than a month in advance of the election, voters are making decisions on candidates, and it has stretched out what is normally maybe a week or two get out the vote effort into a more than a month-long get out the vote effort, and really changes your voter contact entirely. We're seeing a lot of campaigns that, of course, have brought people in from off the street. They're volunteers, and they're putting them on the phones, which is the next best way to get voter contact done by your volunteers. And, we're seeing a lot of challenges related to that, not just by the extended timeline, but by the fact that you have more bodies on the phones in some cases. Some campaigns that maybe would feel fortunate to get through their phone universe once or twice before the election, have enough people making calls that they're doing it 4 or 5, 6 times, which is great, but presents whole new challenges in terms of the freshness of your content and making sure you're not leaving the same 6 voicemails on a voter's voicemail box, and things like keeping your data fresh when you ID something. Actually, regularly scrubbing your voter file when you start to get IDs and moving them from your persuasion universe into your get out the vote universe. Yeah.
What kind of content works here, and what should campaigns be thinking about in terms of content when they are communicating the vote by mail piece to supporters, right? Digital ads, even videos whereby you are actively showing somebody how to fill out that ballot, exactly where to sign it. What sort of things should campaigns think about producing? And then as a corollary to that, for the folks that you've communicated with, campaigns you're working with, do you think campaigns are focusing on that education component enough?
We haven't seen a massive education component from campaigns. Most campaigns are in primaries and are focusing on primary issues. Certainly it affects the get out the vote facet of things. You're seeing a lot of voters, especially on the Republican side of things, that are maybe a little more resistant to voting by mail. Maybe still think that they just pop down to their local election location on election day, and maybe for whatever reason aren't aware. So there is an education component, but I think it's happening within the scope of the overall message of the campaign. What it really challenges the campaigns with is with their data operations, because in a vote by mail situation, you've got a month-long get out the vote effort. You are daily scrubbing your file because ballots are arriving every single day. You're doing those efforts and trying to find out who have you ID'd that supports you, that needs to be sorry about that. It needs to be in on the needs to be contacted. They've ID'd as supporting you. They haven't cast their ballot yet. You can see they haven't cast their ballot yet. You've got 2 weeks to get that done. And getting a message to them along those lines. All my ears are falling out today. What's the deal? All right, there we go.
So, Ed, we were chatting a little bit before the interview about e-signatures, which I think is a really interesting piece of what's happening right now, right? Not only for candidates to get on the ballot, but in ballot initiative campaigns in some states across the country. Some states have passed executive orders to allow for verified digital signatures. In other places, there are sort of legal battles surrounding this. Could you talk a little bit about some experience you have with this? Because this is a really, really interesting piece that I think is going to move forward as a result of COVID.
Yeah, actually, it was really interesting. Right as COVID hit and people started getting locked down, a number of states were in ballot qualifications for their candidates. So one that we did recently was for a U.S. Senate candidate in New Jersey. Literally a week, actually, it's about 10 days before the deadline to qualify on the ballot. Everybody had been pulled in, and they still needed to gather signatures. And so the governor passed an executive order permitting campaigns and candidates to use electronic signatures in their ballot, their signature gathering efforts, which is great in one sense, but in another sense presented a whole new challenges. So we did an email and Facebook outreach to identify and acquire supporters to e-sign ballot petitions for that particular client. Did something similar in Utah as well. Utah has a slightly different law. In New Jersey, the governor was not able to legally change the date that petitions were due by, but he could change the method. Utah was almost the opposite. They could not permit e-signatures, but they would permit you to send a request to a voter, have them wet sign a form, take a photo of that form, and email that form in. So a little more complex process, and it varied from state to state. So it's been very interesting, and it's been very fast. We've had to roll these things out, literally within 24 hours of being contacted by a client because the deadlines are so tight.
Last question for you, Ed, and this is something that I'm particularly interested in this cycle, right? Because campaigns are having to really change how they do so much. They can't rely necessarily on the things that have always worked, whether that's in media or mail or digital. What do you see sort of moving forward the most in a cycle like this? I know it's a bit early still to be able to say, but it's certainly a moment for innovation when campaigns have got to kind of be forced out of that traditional outreach. They can't fall back on what they've always done, and they're out of their comfort zone. And when that happens, we do see things move forward and innovate.
Right. I would say one of the biggest challenges I'm seeing is in data. I mean, I think a lot of campaigns are looking pretty good in terms of message. And of course, a lot of the digital platforms and voter contact platforms out there are well-known quantities at this point. So, but I think where the challenge is that things have shifted so much that you have new data challenges, particularly in, scrubbing files, people who have voted, people who have ID'd. And because you're often doubling down in other forms of voter contact, making sure that you're keeping your message fresh. It's not that let's pop up a phone system, let's have the candidate record a voicemail. You need to actually have a full program that's data driven to do that, so that you're not, wearing out the voters on the same message over and over as you're doing that more direct digital voter contact.
Yeah. Ed Williams, Digital Director at McShane, LLC. Ed, thanks so much for chatting with us and sharing some of the experience of what's happening on the digital side for candidates and campaigns this cycle.
You bet. Thank you.